Dear Diary, my ex-fiancé wants to catch up after he left me at the altar. How do I proceed? 2 years ago, I experienced what I can only describe as the most surreal and devastating day of my life. My life was turned upside down in a way I never imagined. My 32-year-old ex-fiancé, Derek, disappeared on the morning of our wedding without a word. There was no note, no phone call, no text message, no explanation, just the deafening silence of abandonment and the deafening absence of the man I adored. I was 28, deeply in love, and about to marry the man I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with. Instead, I was left with an empty altar and a shattered heart. The day started like any other wedding morning, excitement buzzing in the air, as my bridesmaids and I got ready. The dress was perfect, the flowers arrived on time, and my mom had already cried twice before breakfast. By mid-morning, though, whispers began circulating. Derek was not answering his phone. My maid of honor assured me it was probably just nerves, but as the hours passed, my stomach twisted into knots. Our wedding guests were seated, the venue was beautifully decorated, and the day was supposed to be one of celebration. But, as the minutes turned to hours and Derek didn't show, the reality began to sink in. When it became clear he was not coming, I felt like I was in a bad dream. The hours after his disappearance were a blur of confusion and heartache. My family and friends rallied around me, trying to distract me from the growing weight of the unknown. Guests were ushered to the reception area, where my family and friends did their best to salvage the day, turning the event into an impromptu party. They toasted to love and resilience, but I could barely process anything. That night, I returned to the apartment we had shared. It was eerily silent without Derek there. Still in my wedding dress, I collapsed onto the cold tiles of the bathroom floor, too emotionally drained to move. I curled up on the bathroom floor and cried until exhaustion overtook me. I cried until there were no tears left and fell asleep where I lay. I'll never forget the feeling of waking up the next morning. I woke up still in my gown, feeling broken, cold, disoriented, and profoundly humiliated. It was the lowest point of my life. A few days later, Derek's mother showed up at my door. She came to visit me, her face pale and tear-streaked. She looked as if she had aged years in just a few days. She was the one who finally delivered the news. "I'm so sorry," she began, her voice shaking. Derek had run off with his ex-girlfriend. Apparently, they had reconnected just a week before our wedding, and he decided he could not go through with marrying me. To make matters worse, his ex had just revealed that Derek was the father of her child, a child she had hidden from him for years. Overwhelmed by the news and unsure of what to do, he chose to leave everything behind to rebuild a life with them. He chose to leave me at the altar and run back to her. His mother was distraught. His family was as blindsided and mortified as I was, and offered nothing but repeated heartfelt apologies on his behalf. Weeks passed, and I never heard from Derek himself. Until 3 months later, Derek finally called me. I answered out of sheer curiosity. His voice sounded tentative, almost rehearsed. He offered a halting apology for the pain he had caused and seemed remorseful. He explained that discovering he had a child had completely upended his priorities, and he felt compelled to choose his newfound family over me. He claimed he was trying to do the right thing by being there for his child and starting over with his ex. But his words felt hollow. I listened in stunned silence, unable to summon the energy to respond. At that point, I was too numb to care. I was trying to forget him and move on with my life. I think the only word I uttered during that call was hello. Looking back, I realized that the numbness I felt was a defense mechanism. I could not process the betrayal, so I shut down emotionally. I was in survival mode, just trying to get through each day without falling apart. My friends and family became my saving grace and lifeline during that time. They tried to rebuild my self-confidence and reminded me of my worth when I could not see it myself, and encouraged me to seek therapy. Therapy was one of the hardest things I've ever done, to put it mildly. Each session forced me to confront my emotions, the pain, anger, inadequacy, shame and humiliation I felt head-on. The sessions helped me to let go of the numerous questions I asked myself. Why wasn't I enough for Derek? What had I done wrong? My therapist helped me unpack these thoughts, challenging me to see Derek's actions as a reflection of his shortcomings, not mine. One particularly transformative moment came during a group therapy session. Another participant, who had also been abandoned by a partner, shared her story of rebuilding her life. Her words resonated deeply. The closure you're looking for doesn't come from them, it comes from you. That sentiment became my mantra as I worked to reclaim my identity and rebuild my life. Little by little, I began to heal. I started setting small goals for myself, going for walks, trying new hobbies, and focusing on my career. After about a year of intense self-reflection and healing, I finally felt like myself again, stronger, wiser, and more resilient. Then, I decided to make a bold move, literally. As part of my journey to move forward, I decided to leave Australia and start fresh in the UK. The idea of a change in scenery was appealing, and I wanted to create new memories far away from the places that reminded me of Derek. So I packed my life and bags in Australia and moved to Wales. It's been a transformative experience. The idea of starting over in a new country was terrifying but exhilarating. Wales has been everything I hoped for and more. I've explored ancient castles, hiked through lush green landscapes, made new friends, and fallen in love with the rolling green hills and rich history of this beautiful country. I've found a sense of peace I didn't think was possible. Just when I thought I had left the past behind, Derek has found a way back into my life. Last night, my sense of peace was disrupted when I received a message request on Instagram. It was from him, Derek. It read, "Hey, I've heard you moved to Wales, that's so cool. I'm traveling to Cardiff towards the end of July. I'm deeply sorry about everything and I want to discuss what happened leading up to the wedding. I hope I'm not overwhelming you. Let me know if you'd like to talk over lunch." My first thought was, who told him I moved? My social media is private, and I've been careful about sharing personal details. More importantly, why now? After 2 years, what could he possibly have to say that would make any difference? The message left me shocked, confused and conflicted. On one hand, part of me is curious and wonders if hearing him out would provide the closure I never got. On the other hand, I fear reopening old wounds or being drawn into his chaos again. As I reread his message, a flood of emotions washed over me. A part of me was angry. Derek had made his choice when he walked away. Do I really want to reopen that chapter of my life? I've spent the past 24 hours wrestling with questions. What could he possibly say now that would make a difference? Why does he feel the need to unearth the past after 2 years? And most importantly, do I owe him my time or energy? On one hand, meeting him could validate how far I've come. I'm no longer the broken woman he left behind. I've rebuilt my life and discovered a strength I didn't know I had. Confronting him face to face might be empowering. On the other hand, what if his words only reignite old wounds? What if he tries to justify his actions, and I find myself reliving the pain I've worked so hard to move past? There's also the matter of boundaries. By responding to his message, am I inviting unnecessary drama into my life? Or am I being too cautious, potentially missing an opportunity for growth? Some part of me is tempted to meet him. Maybe it's curiosity, or maybe it's a desire to prove to myself how far I've come. But there's also a voice in my head urging caution. Derek's actions were selfish and reckless, and his choices caused immense pain. Do I really want to give him the opportunity to justify his behavior? One of the hardest lessons I've learned through therapy is that closure isn't always about getting answers. Sometimes, it's about accepting that you may never fully understand why someone hurt you and choosing to move forward anyway. That said, a part of me wonders if this is an opportunity to hear him out, not for his sake, but for mine. Maybe confronting him will help me put this chapter to rest once and for all. I think back to the moments that defined my healing process. As I weigh my options, I'm reminded of a conversation I had with my best friend shortly after Derek left me at the altar. She dragged me out of the house for a spontaneous beach day. We sat on the sand, the waves crashing in the background, as she told me, "You don't need answers from him to move on. You're stronger than you think." She was right. Closure didn't come from Derek, it came from within. Late last night, I called her after I received the message from Derek, and she told me, "You don't owe anyone your time or energy, especially not someone who's hurt you. Protect your peace at all costs." Her words struck me, and I think they are especially relevant now. And yet, here I am, wondering if meeting him might bring some sense of finality. Maybe it is not closure I'm seeking, but validation, that I've risen above the pain and reclaimed my life. But what if it backfires? What if his words only reignite the hurt or anger I've worked so hard to overcome? Ultimately, I'm torn. Should I meet with Derek and hear what he has to say, or should I prioritize my well-being and leave the past where it belongs? What should I consider before making this decision? Would it be wiser to decline and protect my peace, or should I humor him and hear what he has to say? What would you do in my position? Have you ever faced a similar situation, and how did you handle it? I'd love to hear your thoughts and advice.
Dear Diary,